Hello, world singers. My name is Tyler,
And my name is Brooke.
and this is Cosmere
Cosmere
Conversations.
Conversations.
We have done it, folks. Last time you heard from us, we were flying on our way to Nexus, and now we have returned successfully.
We've made our annual pilgrimage and have returned fueled by Cosmere goodness.
I would say that is true. Last year at this time, we were wrecked.
Yeah,
Our bodies
we
were
were.
destroyed. I felt like Theoden King at the end of Pelennor Fields, just like my body is broken. And I had nothing left to give. We barely got through a recap episode. This year, I feel stronger. I
Yeah.
feel ready to go and just like, as you said, refueled by the energy coming off of Dragonsteel Nexus. I'm gonna do something bold here.
Okay.
I'm gonna get ahead of Brandon on the state of the Sanderson and say that the state of the Sanderson is strong. We had a fantastic time and we wanted to bring some of that energy to all of you. We know that many people were able to go. We saw some of you. That was really great. But we know that a larger number of people are unable to go to the Mecca that is the Salt Palace in Utah for Dragonsteel Nexus. And so these are our thoughts, some of our hot takes, some of the fun things that we saw, and a little bit of a breakdown of everything that we experienced at Dragonsteel Nexus 2025.
Let's start with just like what were your overall impressions, maybe some of your top things that come to mind when you think about Nexus this year.
Sure. I think I'm going to start with the people. This has been true every single year
Yeah.
that we went. It is why we like going back so much, regardless of if you are my friend, if you are someone that I speak with on the daily, or if you're just a random person that I happen to interact with at Nexus. Even if you're a person who is working at one of the nearby restaurants. Literally everybody at Nexus I find so empathetic, so caring, so kind and compassionate, and just enthusiastic about being with the people that are there and like present in a way that is so great. I think that a person that I saw, it might have been Seth, a fellow panelist Seth, who said, what I love about Nexus is people are authentic and like I really
Yeah.
make that connection. And then I come back to the real world and everyone is trying so hard to be boring and
Yeah.
lame.
Everyone's like pretending they're not a little bit weird.
Yes. And at Nexus, the people really define it. And so
Yeah.
a huge, hats off and thank you to like the Squires and Dragonsteel as a company putting all this stuff together. But in reality, my favorite thing is always the people that are there. So thank you if you were there. I love the vibes coming out of Nexus.
Yeah, I think that's totally true. And this year, every year we just make more and more friends in the Cosmere community. And so, every year we have more and more capital C connections to really cultivate during this time, which we can do throughout the year via the magic of the internet. But there's something really special in being able to come together. But as you said, even people we don't necessarily know personally, it's just so wonderful to look around at everybody's cosplays and be able to, turn to anyone you're waiting in line with and have a conversation about these worlds that we all have a mutual love for. And, Brandon writes a lot about the importance and the role of art in a society. Like why
Mhm.
do we make art? Why should this happen? Why should art exist? Why should we continue making it and continue supporting it? And I think that Nexus is such a beautiful example because it is fundamentally this thing that starts with a seed of a book, this piece of art that one person created that has such power and like engenders and encourages people to be the best versions of themselves and to continue trying even after failure, and is really this like inspirational beacon. And then all of the people who gather around that book, whether it be you and I and our friends or the actual company that grew up around the book, it starts radiating out. And we see that because we, go to restaurants around the Salt Palace and literally hear from the service people at those restaurants, like, wow, we love everybody who's coming in from this convention. Like, you all are so nice, have such a like great vibe that you're bringing into our workplace. Someone literally said to us, there must be something in these books. Like, why are you all such good people? There must be something in these books. Like, I'm going to need to read this. And that joy, that inspiration, that passion and connection, is then literally emanating out into the greater society. Like, that server went home that night and maybe was a little bit kinder to the
Right.
people in their life. And then those people were maybe a little bit kinder to the people they came into contact with. Like, it really is this huge ripple effect that all comes from a piece of art.
I agree. The positive spiral off of Nexus really does inspire me to keep coming back. It's like the defining point of our year in many respects. It's just something we look forward to, something we enjoy. And then I agree. The impact afterward is unknown, but we know that it's a good vibe. And I'm so happy to be a small part of that, a tiny little ripple that is going outwards. But it also feels so wonderful to be part of the larger ripples that are going out. And I know this is true because we met multiple people who are complete newbies. This was their
Oh,
very
yeah.
first convention. And to me, that is something that I love to see. I'm all like, I know that this podcast doesn't always demonstrate it because we're like, read 35 books before you listen to episode 1. However, I truly think that it's great that the Cosmere community is expanding. I know there are different creators that like they focus on that. Some people are like trying to give an avenue from romantasy into the
Yeah.
Cosmere. And
Yeah.
Brandon in his last year, 2024, talked about that specifically and like
Yeah.
kind of having open arms. And then this year I experienced that of people being like, I heard Brandon speak. I maybe followed some creator that like was in the romantasy space, started talking about Mistborn. And then I showed up at this convention. Maybe it's just like a little thing, but maybe they're already doing cosplays and going to the Worldhopper Ball and like all the stuff. And it's
I
just so
think
cool.
I think that is also perhaps a good thing that came out of the new ticketing system this year and like the
Oh,
lottery
okay. Yeah.
system. That maybe some of those people who like may not have been able to or willing to jump on ticket sales immediately and try to get like a first come first serve thing
Right.
were more able to get tickets to come for the first time because of the lottery system, because there wasn't this like really intense push at one specific time to get tickets. Because I do know there's a lot of folks who have jobs that they, can't step away from
Of course.
to get tickets and whatnot. Or, yeah, people who maybe are thinking about going, but want to consider a little bit more and like just don't have the time if they need to do it in a really time bound way. So I think that was maybe a benefit of the ticketing system this year, that we did run into a lot of first time Nexus folks.
That's a really good point. Obviously, we're on the other end of the spectrum.
Yes.
I'm be like, I'll take
I want to fight people at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday and get my ticket.
like I don't need to work. Work is irrelevant. I
Yeah.
want to go to the
I put a
convention.
block on my calendar. I'm
Yeah.
not kidding.
Just like we're not taking business calls right
Yeah.
now. This is ridiculous. Now we know that's not true for everyone. And
Yeah.
like I think that it's a really good point that it may have given people an opportunity. You hear about because it went in like a tiered system
Yeah.
over 3 weeks or so. And so maybe you hear about tier 1, you get that specific email engaging you and like reaching out to you and saying like, you now have the opportunity to buy tickets. Do you want to do so? That's a very different experience than like fight and claw your way at 10 a.m. And it's between
Right.
10 a.m. and 10:07 a.m. before everything is sold out.
Especially if you're a new fan, like
Yeah.
you might not even hear about the convention
Right.
until after it's already sold out. And so you don't even really have the option to come. So anyway, I think that was maybe, a point in the column of the tiered ticketing system this year.
That's really interesting because my memory of that time was stress. I did
Yeah.
not like that lottery system specifically because of like how much time it went on. And
Yeah.
so I was worrying for like weeks. And I think it was like
It
multiple
was.
weeks
Yeah.
that I wasn't going to be invited. And like, what would that mean? And I already paid for a hotel and I already paid for a flight. And like, all of this stuff had like already happened and I'd spent money on. And then I was wondering if I'm even going to get a ticket and be like,
Yeah. I
eventually,
mean,
I think we can just like be honest. We did not get called in the lottery system.
yeah.
The way that we purchased our ticket was through a friend who was a couple. And so they bought two and they could buy two more. And so bought our tickets.
Yeah.
And I have no idea if that's like what Dragonsteel wants or if I was like stealing a
Yeah.
slot from somebody else. Like it was so
I mean,
morally
they
questionable.
were following the rules. Like
Of
they could
course, yeah.
get 4 tickets, they got 4 tickets. So I don't think it was, morally questionable. I don't know if it is necessarily solving the entirety of the problem that the company was attempting to solve
Mm,
by sort of providing more democratization to the process.
right.
Contrary to what I just said, in the ways that it did actually offer, I think, some more flexibility and offer spots to people who maybe weren't able to get them in the past, it is still at least somewhat weighted towards people who know someone, right? So, like,
Hmm.
if we were new fans, we would not have had this experience because we wouldn't know anyone else who could buy us tickets who got called.
Right.
So, like, we still definitely benefited from, our version of kind of nepotism or just,
A network.
knowing a lot of people in the Cosmere community that we were able to find someone who could get us tickets. So I don't know. Yeah, I think there's a lot of issues with the system in general, especially the way that downstream decisions and choices kind of affected the convention with the way that they did tickets this year. So I'm not convinced that it's the best way to do ticketing, and I will certainly be interested to see what choices they make next year.
Let's talk though about the convention itself, the time that we were actually there, because there were some just like major changes in terms of Dragonsteel Nexus. They shifted the entire convention halls basically backwards from how it was previously. If you went to Nexus in previous years, everything was organized on one side of the convention center, and this year it was flipped. And so I think that it is the east and west sides respectively. It doesn't really matter because nobody here has a map. So really what we're talking about is just like they went from having the convention hub and the kind of focal point of the convention on one side, and then it moved over to the other side of the Salt Palace. This created a lot of different vibes and feeling, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And many of them were good. I think that the primary reason it was done was space consideration.
Yeah, and I do think that the amount of space, especially inside the exhibitor hall,
Right.
was much improved. It felt a lot more spacious. You didn't feel so claustrophobic when you're like trying to go see the Cosmere art and stuff in the exhibitor hall. So I think there was a lot of benefit to that. Also, selfishly, it was just closer to the entrance closest to our hotel. So it was like faster for us to get there, which I enjoyed.
Yeah. And so, like, all of the exhibitor halls, the game room, and the most of the different panel rooms, as well as the grand ballroom for the Worldhopper Ball, they were all along a central hallway. And so you could be moving up and down this central hallway and then just go left or right into the different rooms. There were some, caveats to that experience, but for the most part, you had this long central hallway. And on the other side, it's kind of like turns and corners and upstairs and downstairs, and you kind of like
Yeah.
go around here. The benefit of where it used to be, though, and I wonder if you feel the same, is that because it was a little cramped, because there was this central area where like there are stairs and there are tables and couches, and it
Yeah.
kind of created like a community hub that you always had to return to and go
Yeah.
through.
Yeah, last year and in years previous, there really was this kind of central, it was even almost circular kind of lobby area
Yeah.
that everything spoked off of.
Yes. Spokes
So
of a wheel. That's great.
moving to and from different places in the convention, you were always going through this central area. And in that central area, they had game tables and like little diamond painting like crafts that people could be doing together. And so there would always be just like groups of people playing games, gathering for cosplays. Last year they were, trading their cards, eating food and like taking a break. There was just this really nice kind of community space that you were always passing through. And so literally the community vibe was at the center of the convention physically. And I think that feeling really infused the experience of the convention. And we really didn't have that this year because, as you said, it was this one large hallway. You didn't really have a central space.
Hmm.
I think they did still have those tables. I'm honestly not 100% sure because, again, they like weren't centrally visible. Instead, the pass through place that you were going through to get here and there throughout the convention was the exhibitor hall.
Right.
And I didn't enjoy that as much. One, it meant that the exhibitor hall itself like became the pass through and therefore had unnecessary traffic
Sure.
that I
Just a
think is just,
logistical.
yeah, logistically like not a good idea. And then secondarily, it meant that the heart of the convention, the center of the convention was commerce. And that
Mm.
just like feels very different. I felt a little bit more disconnected from the community at large versus previous years.
And I would say I would kind of echo that sentiment and just be, it's going to be true no matter really what happens. But that exhibitor hall is so loud. And with people just using it as a thoroughfare and to like move between rooms, it became louder. And like
Yeah.
I felt overstimulated when I
Yes.
walked in there. And so like I wanted to get through there as quickly as possible, kind of like turn my brain off and just be
Uh-huh.
like, I need to get to the other the Rashar room or
Yeah,
whatever.
which is really unfortunate because they actually they tried to make it a community space. I could see what they did. Like they tried to make it
Hmm.
this kind of cognitive realm like Shadesmar, like gathering place where they
Right.
had these cute arches and like lamp posts and street signs and like tables out. They had musicians coming in to play so you could get food from vendors and like sit and listen to a musician. And the idea is
Hmm.
fantastic.
Yeah.
But as you said, because of all the ambient noise, it was almost like annoying that there was also live musicians. It was just like, oh my God, no, not another thing in my ears because I already have the people in the little combat ring,
Yeah.
like banging their swords and 10,000 people talking at the same time. And the game room, like yelling about their RPG, and everybody in line for the Dragonsteel store
Yeah.
talk, like, it was a lot.
Yes. And it's just like it's echoing. It's a big room with like no actual dividers.
Yeah.
And so I don't know a logistical way around it, but it
Right.
is just like it's overwhelming. And that's the only sense I ever got when I walked into the exhibitor
Yeah.
hall. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
deep breath,
So they,
everyone.
like,
And
tried to make it a community place, but it wasn't actually somewhere I wanted to spend any time.
exactly. And I think that is probably reflected where it's kind of the difference between maybe like a movie theater or a Borders bookstore. Those exist, right? Still. And a baseball game or a football game where like, if you go into the stadium is just going to be
Mm.
like rocking and crazy. And there's going to be
Yeah.
music and like people shouting out to get your peanuts and all that jazz. That's kind of the vibe. It was like
Yes.
stepping
Yes.
into a very active experience, which is great. It's energy, it's fun, it's only there for a couple of days and you don't do that every day.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it does shift the overall vibe
Yeah.
towards high energy, high commerce, instead of a little like slower community. And again, logistically, I don't know a way around this, and that's really
Yeah.
difficult.
Yeah, totally. The other thing that I think was a little bit lacking this year, but actually is something that they could easily improve on for next year would be just better signage. for where things were,
Right.
especially one of the panel rooms called Scadrial that we did all of our panels in. It was actually in the part of the convention center that we were in previously. So it was kind of on the other end of the convention center. And the only way to easily get there was to go through the exhibitor hall, but there were basically no signs telling people where that room was. And so, for example, our first panel on the Thursday, early on the Thursday, we couldn't even get there through the exhibitor hall because the exhibitor hall was only open to early access people. And so we had to go all the way around in this really surreptitious way. Like, I wasn't even sure we were going to be able to find the room like before our panel. And so I'm sure there are people who trying to attend it who also like couldn't find where that room was. And it's just something that I think some better signage can easily fix.
Exactly. And I'll just echo that. But in regards to Detritus Room, which is the game room,
Yeah.
Detritus was, they tried to do some separation, but they just had like cloth. And so it was like black cloth, maybe like 20 or 30 feet high, surrounding the game room inside of the bigger exhibitor hall. But because there wasn't a whole bunch of signage telling you what it was very easy to just like walk by
Absolutely.
and not know that there was anything in there. Maybe it's like, oh, that's private, or that's, some event that
Totally.
I'm not invited to,
Because
or
there were similar spaces that were like the exhibitor lounge or,
right,
like
right.
private lounge spaces for different groups.
Yeah. And it's just like, if you don't immediately know and recognize what something is,
Yeah.
and you are in this gigantic room where it's just like a lot of noise, you're not going to like go poking your head into something that you don't know. And so, yeah, signage, just kind of like communicating what they want. I think that those things did exist. It's not as if they didn't exist. It's they existed on like the personal scale, and they needed to be on the scale of the exhibitor hall.
Yes.
And that's really just like, I think a relatively easy way to adjust the logistics in the future. Just like big, gigantic hanging sign that says like Detritus game room here, Scadrial, like follow this path, or like, perpendicularity to Scadrial, like, follow, or like arrows, just there are many different ways that when you have something like a stadium and 10,000 people moving and interacting, you can find out how to communicate the best way to get from point A to point B. And I think that was just a difficulty. But then again, overall, things like this had to happen because Nexus was growing in size.
Yeah.
And like the other side has all of these weird bottlenecks.
Yeah.
And we started to feel those bottlenecks more and more. And this just like, it really did alleviate the bottlenecks. It just became like a thoroughfare when you're kind of moving left to right, and it's less of that community experience.
Yeah.
So I see the pros and the cons, but let's go over in a little bit more detail. Did you have any things that really jumped out as great experiences of Nexus?
I really enjoyed all of the featured guests this year.
Right.
We had Pierce Brown, Matt Dinneman,
Brent Weeks.
Oh yeah, Brent Weeks. I didn't even see him anywhere, but he was there.
Christopher Paolini.
And then Tomi Adeyemi.
I really loved the panels that they were on. There were probably like at least one or two each day that had featured guests. And I think that there were a large number of people who were coming because they were attracted by Pierce Brown or by Matt Dinneman. Like I saw a bunch of cosplays for the Howlers, for Dungeon Crawler Carl. Like I think that that was a aspect that, you might see different Brandon books, sometimes like a Skyward or even like a Reckoners. But like this was the first year where I really saw fandoms coming together and like coming to Nexus.
Yeah.
And I feel like, man, I always wanted it to be called the Cosmere Convention, but Brandon probably knew what he was doing in calling it Nexus because
the meeting place.
Yeah, exactly. And seeing different groups come together and people like, we'll talk about this a little bit more, but I loved the crossover cosplays.
So good.
Some of my favorites of the year. But I agree. The guest speakers and guest authors were really great and just top-notch like people overall to join the convention. Like I know that Pierce Brown did this Wednesday night and the convention starts on Thursday, but he did like a Wednesday night Howler meetup at like a arcade bar and just like met with people. I know Matt Dinneman was always like walking around the exhibit hall, like meeting with people, same with Christopher Polini. And it's just like, how cool for some people to just, watch their favorite author get in a lightsaber duel with like random fans and stuff like that. It's just like, it was a really special experience, not only because Brandon Sanderson was there.
We have to talk about maybe the best part of the entire convention, the Worldhopper Ball.
Maybe? Are we going maybe?
I mean, I don't want to speak for everybody.
It's not for everybody. It's just for us. Like, well, at least I'm going to speak just for me. I won't even speak for you. That would be inappropriate.
Thank you.
Yes, it's the greatest thing ever. It is so incredible. The Worldhopper Ball put on by Paladin Creative, friends of the pod. We hope that we'll be able to talk to them early next year about the logistics and kind of the operation side of things. But like the actual experience for us last year, we talked a lot about. And it was this moment of true import to the overall Cosmere. We had book 5 of Stormlight Archive. We were experiencing Adolin and Shallan's wedding, and it was emotional. It was meaningful in like a way that I wasn't expecting. And then we got to do things like, dance with our friends and just be like, have a great night. And I wanted, my fingers were crossed. I was just like, I hope they can make it as good as last year. That my actual fear was that it just wouldn't live up to last year.
Really?
And that I was just like, I was going to have to like go to my friends and be like, yeah, it was nice. And I was afraid. Like that was my thing.
Sure.
I was just like,
yeah, that makes sense.
I can't imagine repeating something that I thought was so good last year.
Yeah.
They blew us out of the water. It was insanely better than last year. It was so good. I cannot convey the experience of walking in to the Worldhopper Ball on Thursday night, and you and I are like dressed up. We're surrounded by these people who are like all excited in the same way, and they're all nerds, and they all look fantastic. Your cosplays, your fancy outfits, you looked so good. And like we walk through this dark hallway, and Kelsier and Hoyd are there to like usher us in, and they're saying we're gonna like tell the story of a knight from Mistborn, and we're gonna welcome you in to Keep Venture. And we walk through the pits of Hathsin. Like last year, we walked through the perpendicularity, and then we emerge into the grand ballroom itself in the Salt Palace, which is a remarkable room. And it's just like, like that room itself is fantastic, but what they did in there is so incredible.
It's incredible. I had no expectations.
You try to go the opposite.
Yeah, absolutely. I had no expectations. I didn't speculate really at all about what it might be like. I went in like completely open-minded with no preconceived notions. And I walked into that ballroom and quite literally my jaw dropped. And I like doubled over in shock, nearly burst into tears, was just like truly swept off of my feet. Absolutely astonished. It was insane. Like last year, as you said, was so beautiful and wonderful. And I don't know what it was about this year, if it was just that the space itself is like more majestic, or if it really is like I had no concept at all in my mind about what it was going to look like. But it was stunning and magical. And I think you really nailed this when you were talking to some other folks about the Worldhopper Ball, that last year there was at least a little bit of an element of effort to suspend disbelief and just sort of be present in the moment and decide to enjoy yourself. And I'm pretty good at that. I think you're pretty good at that. Like that's just sort of the way that we move through life in general, but it does take a little bit of effort. And this year they really did a great job of removing a lot of the friction for a lot of people to that suspension of disbelief. And that was not only in just like the beauty of what they created, but they also really took a lot of the feedback from last year on board and, for example, had a lot more food and drink stalls. The room itself was just bigger and more spacious and so felt more comfortable. There was a lot more seating, which meant I think people just felt like they could relax a little bit more and they weren't constantly in this sense of scarcity of
Right.
like, oh no, I need to get in line for food right now. Oh no, I need to get in line for drinks right now. Oh no, I need to grab this seat because there's not enough and like I can't leave now because someone else will take it. That are kind of things that preoccupy people
Of
and keep
course.
them from being able to just be present in the world. And so kudos to Paladin Creative for like really taking all of that feedback. I know that they worked really hard to try to address the things that were problems for people last year, and holy cow, did they succeed.
It is my opinion and like my thought process that this experience of the Worldhopper Ball, that, Dragonsteel at some point reached out to Paladin, and Paladin is like working to create what Dragonsteel asked for and what they want. It locks in and solidifies everything that I love
Yes.
about Dragonsteel Nexus.
Mhm.
It is the cosplays and the people like being willing to suspend their disbelief and like being willing to, like Aladdin and Jasmine, just like you go to the edge and you jump off together, and just like you have to give yourself over to the experience. And I think what did it for me last year, it wasn't immediate. I walked in the space, it's beautiful, it's wonderful. But what I said was the transition moment for me was when Brandon was talking about the
Yeah.
characters,
Yeah.
which we got to see on the first night because he was there on Thursday. And he was just like, Dalinar, I met you when I was 19 years old. And all the connections locked into place for me at that time.
Mhm.
This time, walking in to Keep Venture, I was so in awe because it did feel like stepping into the world. It wasn't that I needed to pretend or like buy in. I was in it the moment that like my foot crossed the barrier.
Yeah.
And that is so difficult to do. And it is so amazing to me. Like, this is the most important thing. And if anybody is ever like questioning, like, should I go to the Worldhopper Ball or what is the vibe here? To me, when you step into that world that you love and you have capital C connections with, and then you see these characters, whether it's Kelsier or Vin or Zazed or whoever it is that you connect to, they are real. They are standing before you. It's like that line of connection becomes a guitar string or a piano string, whatever. It's an instrument and it's like getting strummed. And the line of connection is just like being played, creating a little bit of music, and it's growing stronger. And then to me, this is it. This is the thing. You look around at all the other people and you realize that that experience is happening to them as well. And it's an orchestra of connection. It is all of us in it together and experiencing it together in such a rare way and in such a beautiful way that words don't do it justice to like the feeling that I have.
Yeah.
But this is the best that I got. We have a
Yeah. I mean, it really is. I know we said this last year also, but it very much feels like a perpendicularity. It feels like, Dalinar pressing his hands together and like merging the realms. It is the realization of this thing that has existed in the ether of your imagination. And suddenly you're able to interact with it in a real way. And I think especially for me, as like I've gained friends in the Cosmere community, it went from being something in my imagination to then being something that could be sort of cognitive in relationship with other people through,
Mhm.
talking to you on this podcast and talking to people online. And then it moves into the physical realm at Nexus.
Right.
And then it like does that in an even more sort of profound way when the book itself comes into the physical realm in the Worldhopper Ball, and you get to share it with other people. And there's just like this layering of just like insane magical things that happen that make it such a special experience.
I agree. And I have my own Cosmere theories that like the soul is not the spiritual realm aspects. And we've talked about this briefly, but like I think that the soul is the interconnection of the physical, the cognitive, and the spiritual. And as you just said, like we had the spiritual, maybe like just us and Brandon, like we read his words
Mm.
and we like kind of like form this thing in our own minds.
Yeah.
And then we build out the cognitive, you and I talking about the books originally, podcast friends on the internet, like that's the cognitive. And then Nexus does provide the physical, but it's the Worldhopper Ball to me that like makes that all real. And it is those things all operating together where like the heart and soul and the thing that will go into the beyond is like my memories of this experience and like what happened. Like we are like repeating ourselves a little bit from last year, but just like I think dancing is important. I think physically moving your body to music in a space in the world with the people around you, all of that is creating something greater than just the experience, than just the chandeliers that are above you or the Mistborn logo on the dance floor. Like it is creating something greater than everything else around. And what's around is really great. And so the fact that there's more on top of it is just, that's the magical element.
Yeah. To speak to like the actual events that
Sure.
happened in the Worldhopper Ball, I think they also did a really good job this year of kind of adjusting their performance plan
Mm-hmm.
to help again alleviate some of the friction that people felt last year. They really strategically planned those scripted stage events in order to encourage the audience to kind of move around and like churn in the space in between performance segments, which really helped because that way there were at least fewer people who just like camped out right in front of the stage. And then, you know, some people never got the chance to get up close.
Right. Because there was like Ellen on the balcony in the back of the room opposite the main stage. There were events happening on the center dance floor. And then there
Yeah.
were things going on the main stage. And then there were two distinct things that I remember. There was the group dance lesson from like a professional ballroom dance coach.
Mhm.
That person was amazing. Like it's hard to teach anybody anything. It's probably more difficult to teach someone dance, but like the instructor that they got who was like walking us through this poem that was set to music and we're going to like go through these moves and you know the ash falls and then it rises. It was just like so well done and he had such a great cadence. And so he's teaching this entire room of 600 people like how to dance that didn't require everyone to be 5 feet from the stage. And that's kind of
Oh,
like how
yeah.
it just like it broke up and divided
I mean,
things.
they did have people scattered throughout the
Right,
room.
professional
Yeah,
dancers were yes,
examples.
yeah.
Yeah, so that helped. So yeah, using the entirety of the space was definitely a big help in that regard. And then as you said, like this dance segment was breaking up some of the more performative aspects. So they would kind of do a little bit of performance and then like break for photos. And then they
Right.
came back, they did a little bit more performance and then they broke to dance and then they did a little bit more performance. So all of those aspects really helped like get people moving through the space a little bit more. And then when they were performing, they were also using all of the space, using the balcony and the dance floor and the stage, etc.
I think the highlight for me of the performance, and you know, maybe we will discuss this in more detail at a later date, but like I thought all of the actors were really great. But once again, the aerialist,
Oh my
the
God.
fight choreography,
That was
the
far and away my favorite part.
yeah, so you have this scene that is being set where Ellen and Vin are meeting at their first ball, and then it kind of flashes forward to, you know, a second ball, and eventually it gets to the point of Vin fighting Shan Alariel. That's done by a different set of performers, some of whom are aerialists. And so then they are like spinning around with their mist cloaks and they're clashing together. And there's people doing flips and stuff. And then there's fight choreography. And, you know, it's just like all so incredible. And to me, really did something difficult in the way of capturing the subtle moments of Mistborn, not even necessarily subtle, but like Mistborn is sometimes seen as this action book. It is sometimes called like Ocean's 11, but in a fantasy world. And you can kind of misremember it as just like fights all the time. But it really does kind of go back and forth between the balls, the politics, the personal moments, and then great action scenes that Brandon Sanderson is obviously known for. And at the Worldhopper Ball, I felt like they captured that experience. And it's so impactful because by the time, we as readers get to book 3, that's something that Vin remarks on. She's like,
Mm.
I'm not just the knife. I'm not just the assassin or the Mistborn. Like, I am also the person who likes looking good in a ball gown and likes dancing
Mhm.
with Ellen. And they get to have their dance. And if you haven't seen it, like Paladin Creative and Dragonsteel put the last 5 to 10 minutes of the Worldhopper Ball performance online. And so you can watch it. And it's emotional and it like hits so well and so strong. And I'm just in awe. I think back on it. And I'm just like, did we do that? And we did. And it was so great. And I loved it so much. And as I said, it's just become like the focal point of the Nexus. It just like makes all those things real for me.
Yeah, it does. The fight sequence was definitely my favorite part. I am not as emotionally connected to Mistborn. Like, I think that
Compared to Stormlight
Mistborn,
Archive.
yes,
Yeah.
correct. I think that Mistborn is an incredibly written trio of books, and certainly I feel a lot of emotions for those characters. But it's just not as like deeply connected to me as Stormlight
Right.
is. So I don't know. I thought I just wasn't necessarily as moved by the character moments or like the casting this year. It was also obviously different because we were going back and visiting events that we've already seen versus last year we were seeing this like brand new scene that had never happened before. So that's a little bit of a different feeling. But overall it was really enjoyable. The Mistborn fighting sequence was just truly incredible and the best part by far. They also had these like ballroom dancers come in at one point, and I didn't really understand why they were there. They were great dancers, but that kind of took me out of the moment because they also like weren't in book appropriate clothing. And so it brought me back into modern times and kind of took me out of the suspension of disbelief.
Yeah, I think the group dance
The
was
group dance
really
was
great.
great.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then they had this moment and I don't quite know, and maybe we can ask Paladin Creative if there are like show reasons why they like needed more time or they wanted to
Yeah.
stretch this point or whatnot. But I thought that yes, that could have been like a moment to go register and get your different
Yeah, get
medals
your little
because
medal
everybody who walked
vial.
in was randomly given a letter and it made them a missing. And then you could go register with the ministry and you would be handed and given the appropriate vial for your misting calling card that you got. And some people were randomly selected as Mistborn. And then they were called out when
Yeah.
obligators showed up and they were like, if you receive this card, like come to the front. And they like pulled them aside and they got like a bead of ATM and then a special like collector's thing for, being selected. But I just agree that that part was kind of similar to the Bridge Kata last year.
Yeah,
It
I
was just
think
like, this is here, but it's just kind of filling up time until we get to the thing that I actually really enjoyed.
right. Yeah.
Obviously, I had a great time. We had a great time. I think that it was the most important part and the most meaningful part of Nexus for me. What did you think? What's kind of your final thoughts on the Worldhopper Ball?
Yeah, I mean, obviously from this review, we loved it. 10 out of 10 would go again. I know that there were a lot of people who either didn't go this year because they just like couldn't make it work, or a lot of people were really shocked by the cost this year because the cost did increase. And I think that's totally valid. Things are very difficult right now financially for a lot, if not most of us. And it's not cheap. I think it is well worth the cost. Like just comparing it to a sort of normal, like fancy date night that we might go out to.
Right. Yeah.
Or if we just wanted to go see like a regular show here in our city, it's not that much more expensive. And the value of it being like completely unique and obviously so pertinent to us and like the significance that it has for us emotionally and the connection that we have to the source material, in my opinion, like makes up for the small bit of price difference between going to the Worldhopper Ball or just having like a fancy date night together. So that makes me perfectly happy to pay for that experience. And of course, just really grateful that we have the ability to pay for that experience because it is completely unique, something that we cannot do anywhere or at any other time. So that's my 2 cents. Like if it is possible to budget for it, I would rather give up like a regular date night and go to the Worldhopper Ball 100%.
Yeah. And like, let's be honest, it's a couple of regular date nights.
Well,
It's,
a fancy, like if we were going to go to a really nice restaurant,
yeah, but
get
that
a
would be for
bottle of
like,
wine,
yeah, no, I
whatever.
totally agree.
Yeah.
But that's for one ticket, not for two tickets. Cause like that's how a lot of people are conceptualizing.
Yeah, I
It
guess
is,
that's true.
it is a experience that is often done with a partner. Not always.
Yeah.
Definitely saw people there by themselves, which is totally cool. But they're conceptualizing it as two tickets and not one, which then makes the increase of, I think it was $75, like an increase from last year to this year's ticket. So that's $150 for a couple that are going. And so, yeah, it would be like we would be skipping 4 or 5
Yeah.
nice dinners out on the town. But I just, there's nowhere else you can do this.
Yeah,
Like you can't
exactly.
go to the movie theater and experience this. And that makes it rare, which then makes it valuable. We had a patron who early on, like in September, I thought gave a perfect solution to this. I don't necessarily think that people from Dragonsteel are, listening to our podcast, taking advice or anything like that. But I thought it was just the creme de la creme. So I will repeat it every chance that I get, which is increase the price of the general admission ticket by $5 or $10 and use that to lower the price of the Worldhopper Ball by $25 to $50.
Yeah, yeah.
And just like if there's 10,000 people going to general admission or more, then just slightly increase the cost there. That gives you a larger amount of money to decrease the cost of the Worldhopper Ball. It's a little bit of a subsidy. I understand that.
Yeah.
But, there's other ways that people have talked about doing things. Nobody needs my help, but like I would easily pay instead of $125, like $135 for the general admission ticket. If the Worldhopper Ball ticket was then down to like $199 or $200, because that's what the actual price is. But like, I think that that's just like a simple, straightforward solution that could help alleviate some of those cost barriers, or they could like plan for things that's like early access, first wave versus when the ball tickets eventually went out to the public. Just like make those tickets $250 and make the people who are really diehards and like really want to go, make that price overall cheaper. Things like that.
Yeah, I think they have a lot of options for like how to make it a little bit more accessible.
And I think that like if this is the new bar, I mean, maybe they can just keep making it better. I'm just like, please do the same thing next year, right? I'm in the same exact mindset.
I'm a little bit sad that the order of the Worldhopper Balls went Rashar and then Scadrial. Like seeing
right, because this could have been Rashar.
Yeah.
And they could have like done their first time on Scadrial.
And like I said, I know some people are going to be mad at me because there's a lot of people that are really emotionally connected to Mistborn. I am just not one of those people.
Right.
And respect to all of you Scadrial diehards. But me personally, I wish Rashar had been this year and had like gotten the benefit of the 1 year of experience and had gotten the like slightly elevated treatment. So I am a little bit sad about that.
It's okay. We can just wait until Worldhopper Ball 2031, and then we get Rashar in Darkness, owned by Retribution.
No!
That's the ball we have.
Sounds great. Maybe it'll be like speakeasy vibes. They'll be like hiding from retribution.
I think that there's a lot of options. I'm hopeful that we will be able to talk to Paladin Creative next year about all of this again. And as we think we made clear, we really liked the Worldhopper Ball, but that wasn't even everything that happened at Nexus.
Yes,
Let's
let's
go.
talk about some of the other cool things that happened because right before we went to the Worldhopper Ball on Thursday night, Brandon was on stage giving his usual speech and reading, and there was a big announcement. We will have a Cosmere book next year. Yes, ladies and gentle folks, there's another Cosmere novel coming. There was another secret project. This is called The Fires of December, and will be released next winter.
Yes, Nexus 2026 book is Fires of December. It is about Hoyd, and it is
Well, it's not about Hoyd. It
is from Hoyd's perspective as a storyteller, and it is fitting into the existing trilogy of stories that are being labeled the stories of Hoyd's travails. And it's including Tress of the Emerald Sea, You Mean the Nightmare Painter. Something terrible happens to Hoyd, and he tells a group of people a story about it in the future. This book, The Fires of December, is going to fit that mold. And there could be more. Like it's not called a trilogy. It is just more likely to be a series. Yes.
The text of the first 2 chapters that Brandon read at the convention is available online if you'd like to read it. The video is also available if you want to listen to Brandon read it to you. So I won't spoil anything for folks who don't want to know anything about it until the book comes out. But a quick pitch for what this book is, essentially 300 years before the story actually takes place, a prophet saved the kingdom of Mountcrest and killed a demon with the sword. The demon is pinned in place. He is bleeding out 3 rivers of blood that flow through the kingdom. We followed December, who is the daughter of an outlander. She was orphaned and then raised by innkeepers in the small town Rivershore. Through a series of mysterious and unfortunate events that happened both to December personally and then also to the town and the kingdom at large. For example, a magical black plague where 1 person out of 10 survives.
Sounds like a whole bunch of microorganisms.
Of course you would take it there.
I don't know what else a black plague is, but
I'm focused on the 1 in 10.
Yeah, 1 in 10 is great.
Obviously. And then December sort of finds herself in this position where she can maybe try to prevent some of these terrible events from happening.
Very excited about Fires of December. Just a complete shock in the room in the moment when that's announced.
Totally unexpected.
And then, of course, the internet is a storm, a buzz with the new secret project. I don't know how many times Brandon can keep doing this. Like, it's not a secret anymore, Brandon. You're just an insane person who writes all the time. We thank you for it. Very excited about the release next year. And we'll, of course, be covering it on the podcast when it comes out. I think the other big announcement, what they actually started, Brandon and Emily started the Thursday night speech with, was the announcement of the Next Step coin.
Yeah.
We talked about this while we were at Nexus. As far as content creators are, we're not very good. However, I did take the time to make some content regarding this project. It is a challenge coin. It can be received by anybody for free, and it is intended to help people in their darkest moments when they are struggling with mental health, thoughts of suicide, and includes on the back, carved into the coin, a QR code
that will immediately connect you with services and resources to help.
Those services are provided by a group called Nerd HQ and their partner Timely Care. So Timely Care handles the actual mental health work. Nerd HQ is a nonprofit organization. Brandon and Emily are partnering with Nerd HQ. Dragonsteel is selling the coins, and they are available right now that you can purchase. We are doing a little bit of a giveaway with some of patron funds. And so by the time this goes out, you might be able to hear, or have, if you already signed up, you might be selected to get one of those coins.
Yeah, so I think let's just be clear. The coins are available for purchase on the website. You are also able to get a free coin. You can go to the website, you can get a free coin sent directly to you, no cost at all. Dragonsteel is able to do that because of the people who purchase the coin.
Right.
So if you are someone who's not immediately in crisis, or if you just want to support the program, you can go buy a coin, and it will cost a little bit more than it really should so that the program can be subsidized. We basically want to put a bunch of money into this program to support it, to help Dragonsteel continue to send out the coins for free to those who need it. And so we will be purchasing quite a few of the coins, and then we can send them out to folks who want one. It's basically just our way of helping to support the program. Obviously, you can get a coin for free if you want to. But if, for example, you think that the program is really great and you want to support it, maybe you're not in the financial position to right now, we can do that for you, and we will send you a coin for free, but we have paid for it.
I think another aspect that you will likely be hearing about in the future are partnerships directly with Nerd HQ. Again, that's like the nonprofit that is handling this. And going forward, I am excited about different opportunities and programs to support Nerd HQ. All of that is happening right now in the month of December. So probably, 2026, keep an eye out, and we'll try to help out in any way that we are able to support the mission of Nerd HQ.
Yeah, it's such an important initiative. I would really encourage everyone to go listen to Brandon and Emily talk about the program and like why they started it. It's really moving. I know for a lot of us, these books have been there for us in really difficult times. And this is just another way to help people.
So that was night one. And then we have day two with Brandon when he does his spoiler Q&A. This was the first major spoiler Q&A since Wind and Truth. There were a couple of interviews that we've talked about before and a few Word of Brandon opportunities, but this was the first time for the fandom at large to get to ask Brandon questions, some regarding Wind and Truth, as always, some just regarding anything that the fans come up with. That was an incredible experience. And
there were a lot of really good
great
questions and really interesting responses. I did compile some of them for this episode, but honestly, there is too many and this episode is already too long. So we will definitely be doing a future episode with some words of Brandon from the con.
Yeah. Were there any that jumped out to you as just very important or very meaningful, something that just kind of caught your attention in the moment? There was definitely one for me.
Nothing that I can't talk about for 45 minutes.
How about you just give me 4 to 5 minutes?
Well, I did formulate a new theory based on
Hit me with it. Yeah, what do you got?
one of the words of Brandon. I won't read the whole thing, but essentially Brandon gave us a little bit of information about who the Iriali are and why they're weird. I think someone asked basically, are they human? If you looked at their DNA, would they be human? And the basic answer is yes, but he talked a little bit about their investiture being a product of where they're from. And then that made me think, are the Iriali Threnodites from before the evil?
Oh,
because
okay.
my theory about the Threnodites, which is that they had some form of innate investiture that all got corrupted when the Shard of Ambition was killed, therefore corrupting the investiture inside of them and causing them to turn into shades when they die.
Yeah, I also have that theory.
I think it was from me, but...
No, it's from you. I just take it the one step further because the thing that is inside of them...
Okay, yeah,
we know. Moving on.
So my thought is, could the innate investiture that the Iriali have be from Threnody and they just happened to leave the planet, before the investiture was corrupted?
I mean, the Threnodites are super interesting because they also like went very early to Canticle after the evil, but like they have shipfaring. They have maybe the ability to travel, maybe they had the knowledge to travel, and so even after the evil struck, they knew things were out there. If they were the Iriali,
I mean,
then it's like,
maybe.
yeah, it's like we used to go via cognitive realm, then the evil struck. Maybe that, blows up their route,
I mean, there
and let's get
is.
a ship because we know there's stuff out there. And it's like a motivating factor because if they always knew that it was out there, it would like give them a reason to develop space travel quickly.
Maybe. Yeah, I think maybe there would be an element of like rediscovery since we don't really see anything like that in Shadows for Silence.
Hmm.
But there is this kind of pilgrim
Yeah,
foraging,
from one continent to another and just
yeah, culture in Shadows for Silence that does, I think, kind of tie nicely into the Iriali spirit of exploration.
fun. I like that theory. And I like that we will have a whole new crop of fun
Yeah.
theories to branch off of because of the spoiler Q&A. As you said, we'll talk about them all in more detail as they come up, weave them into different podcasts. But I felt like one that was great was something that Brandon canonized on the spot based on a questioner who was asking about what we learned from Isles of the Emberdark and Lift, blessed by or cultivated by Corvellium, who is a dragon. And the questioner said, did Corvellium know how to create Lift's biological transfer of calorie into investiture? Because dragons innately turn investiture into some type of calories. Like that is how they exist.
Right, right.
They
Yeah, they were
pull
basically asking like, was Lift's boon slash curse specifically modeled off of the dragon ability?
Yes, and Brandon, canonized the thought process behind that. Not necessarily like the exact details that the questioner was asking, but this makes complete sense to me. Basically, Corvellium knew what to do because it is a dragon thing to do, and she is a dragon, and could then apply that knowledge to Lift. And I think this is great. It brings in more dragon lore and knowledge, but also connects Lift, who is always like strange and very different, to the long history of the Cosmere, and maybe even sets up like other beings to have a similar type of investiture from the spirit realm type of capacity.
I mean, I think that's going to be only dragons, but
It's
who
dragons and
knows?
Lift.
Well, Lift isn't pulling it from the spiritual realm. She's pulling it from food.
You're right, but the food is like the investiture comes from the spiritual realm. Always. Like all investiture comes from the spiritual realm. And like Lift is triggering something, her biology, she eats food, and then biologically,
Yeah, her body can make investiture.
right, and it pulls that investiture from the spiritual realm, which is what dragons are doing all the time to stay alive. And so I thought that was a incredible moment to like see something be canonized live, and I think it will just have interesting ramifications down the road.
We also, as usual, went to several panels while we were at the con. I'll be honest, we didn't get to as many this year because we were so busy, but we
Well,
did get to a lot of really good ones.
yeah, we were also on panels. Like we were
Yeah,
we
we
were on
were.
3 panels this year.
Yeah,
And
which
so
was a lot.
yeah, by design, we can't go to as many when we are on more.
Yeah.
And there were less panels overall.
Yes, that's true. They gave us actually 90-minute blocks, meaning we actually got to panel for about 75 minutes, which was a huge improvement. It really helps people be able to actually get through material in a meaningful way and have time for audience interaction. One of the panels that I really enjoyed was the like main stage author spotlight with
Right.
all of the featured guests that we talked about earlier. Sanderson was there with Brown and Dinneman and Adeyemi, and it was just a really good time. There was a good mix of just kind of like fun sci-fi fantasy questions as well as more serious, life as an author questions. And all of those people are so charismatic, really great speakers, had really good rapport on stage. That's not always the case with authors,
Of
right? Like
course.
just because you're good at writing a book doesn't mean you're going to be good at giving a speech. But all of these people, very charismatic.
And Brandon was acting as the moderator for those
Yeah.
people, which I think is always great to have. I think moderation on a panel is instrumental. It makes the panels better. It makes the audience's experience better. And
Yeah.
so, yes, this one with professionals who have done this type of thing before with Brandon moderating, yeah, it's going to be near the top of the list. But we also went to a bunch of other ones. There was a panel on cozy fantasy.
Yeah. Honestly, when we went to the cozy fantasy panel, I was like so tired that the coziness was kind of putting me to sleep. So I
It was
didn't
lulling you.
stay. I didn't stay for the whole thing. But something I thought was really interesting that they mentioned is they were kind of talking about how cozy fantasy doesn't necessarily mean that you can't have important stakes in your story. And this really resonated with me because I've read some cozy fantasy that is super fluffy,
Mhm.
almost no stakes, very heavy on the cozy side. And then I've read some books that are classified as cozy fantasy that, while they feel kind of warm and cozy, still have stakes that I really care about and like really important plot points and like moments when the main character is in danger that, feel a little bit heightened without feeling overly stressful. And they were just talking in this panel about how you can have stakes in cozy fantasy, but it's harder. It's so much harder as an author to kind of balance those things. And yeah, I just thought that was really smart. I would say anyone who's looking to pick up a cozy fantasy that is really well done and has that balance of like coziness and stakes that make the story still feel important and impactful. I really loved the Emily Wilde series by Heather Fawcett. Again, really cozy, just like absolutely delightful to read, but legitimately has some like kind of scary, kind of harrowing parts that make it just a really well-rounded, like it feels like a good meal. You get a little bit of everything.
And then I'm going to continue with some of the panels that were less lore intense, because we also had like an artist spotlight on Dan Dos Santos, and you
Yeah.
were able to pick up one of their works of Shalash, get that signed. So that was a huge moment for you personally. You were
Yes.
so happy. I wish I had snuck a picture of you while you were just getting it signed, your eyes all wide.
I have loved his image of Shalash for so many years at this point, and it was really wonderful to finally get a copy of it. And not only to get a copy of it, but to get to have Dan sign it was super cool. It was also very interesting to hear him talk about his background in art. He does a lot of like kind of comic booky
Hmm.
art, and that's actually how he got into art. He said as a child of an immigrant family, his family didn't have a lot of like books or music or anything growing up because they didn't speak the language.
Right.
And his introduction into art was comic books. He said he didn't even know like what painting was until he was a lot older, which I just thought was so fascinating for someone who's made a career out of art.
Yeah, and that kind of idea of like what is your entry point is so important. We talked about it as just like what's your entry point to the Cosmere community? What is your entry point for Dan Dos Santos into art as a profession? The two panels that I thought kind of did a good job of providing an entry point, but like moving us to the real nerdy stuff, which is, let's be honest, like that's the panels we were on. The Cosmere music panel.
Oh
This
man,
was probably my highlight. I mean, I like when the
it
authors are
was so
talking,
cool.
but the Cosmere music panel was so good. Our friends Krishna and Paul, who've been on the podcast before, were on the panel this year, and the quartet of panelists actually went through and created like 30-second clips of new music that applies to each of the shards and some fun combinations of shards. And so they were playing this music live to, 5,000 people or whatever were in the Rashar room. And it was so cool to experience something new in that way, to make those connections. And I just thought like the panel was well done. The one of the other panelists was the head of the Black Piper that did the Kaladin album, and then a artist whose Instagram handle is Shamaz Music. And I thought that just like the four of them, you know, some who had been previous panelists, some who were like professionals and working in the space or just like creating music, and then all of them creating music together. It was just so cool. I liked it so much. And they made available a Google Drive with everything that they had and some of the notes that they used.
Yeah, so we will definitely be doing an episode about this
Right.
in the not too distant future. We have the music, so I would love to be able to play those for our audience and talk a little bit about the shards and what we think about the songs. Maybe we'll have Krishna back. We'll have her kind of talk about their process because it was very cool.
And then the next one was the Winded and Truth post-op, the kind of like what happened in Wind and Truth, what are we thinking now? This starred some of our friends, Cosmere content creators like Cosmere Junkie, Cosmere Mo, Advancing Through Life, the Cosmere Academy, as well as an author and like more famous outside the Cosmere Instagrammer, TD Oral. And I thought that their panel was great. And like I was talking about with in terms of entry points, this is like where things for me always get a little squirrely because you can have the super nerds up on a panel and they can just be like us talking about dragons and what does it mean that lift is biologically created, blah, 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 blah. Like all of that stuff to me is cool. I think to you is cool. To probably the people who are listening to this podcast are cool. But to the 50 or 100,000 or millions of people that are just readers of Brandon's work, that stuff is not the best entry point. And so what I thought this group did well was blending the hyper knowledgeable, the detailed breakdowns, and the great entry points into the deeper lore. And it's hard. Like that's probably the hardest spot to be. It would be easier to just be doing something like Brotherwise Games did, for example, when they're just like, let's talk about Brotherwise Games and the games that we make. It's fun. You'll learn something about games. This is like sitting right on that really difficult line of we want new people to be, it was on the main stage. So it was like, we want as many people as possible to come to this, but it's not the super nerds just talking. And so it's a hard spot to be.
Yeah, it was definitely not about like deep lore. It was a lot more about the kind of literary analysis of talking about the characters and what their character arcs were throughout the books, which I think all of those panelists do a really great job of and do on their channels often. And I think really the strength of this panel was that you had people who were really passionate about the material and people who were already friends, because it did very much feel like a smart, polished version of friends talking in their living room or,
Right.
you know, a really well organized book club. And I think that vibe was also part of what made it feel really accessible and really fun. Like the vibe was really good, in addition to each of the panelists being very well spoken, very
Absolutely.
thoughtful. Like they each individually had excellent points and they collaborated and communicated in the conversation very well together. So all in all, I thought that panel was really good. And I think it is in large part because the quote unquote casting of the
Right.
panelists was spot on.
Yeah. And so I would love if, like, in the future, Dragonsteel was thinking about the panelists in this way of like, what is for a completely brand new reader, an entry point anybody can go to? What is our middle ground? And like, what is the cast or the panelists on those panels bring? And like, how can they bring people in, but also like move people to the next level? And let's be honest, that's where we come in. We were on 3 panels. There were 2 other ones that we went to: Women in the Cosmere, Science in the Cosmere. These are basically for people who have read all of or most of the books.
Yeah.
And then our panels were Stormlight Archive 2, Theorizing in the Future, Villains in the Cosmere, and Dragons in the Cosmere. So those 5 panels, I think, made up the super nerds and kind of like gave an
Yeah.
avenue for the super nerds because it
I
was a
mean, I
lot of
guess
detailed stuff.
Women in the Cosmere wasn't necessarily a lot of deep lore, but it was talking about women throughout all
Multiple
of
books.
Sanderson's work.
Right.
So, yeah, it was definitely helpful to have a broader idea of those characters. Man, that panel, honestly, Women in the Cosmere is too broad. They could have talked for hours and hours. I feel like they barely got through anything, which was really a shame because there were some really great conversations. They were presenting the panel through the lens of the heroine's journey,
Yes.
sort of in contrast to the hero's journey. And I thought that framework was super interesting. Big shout out to our friend Audrey Autonalsium on socials, who did a lot of organizing for that panel. I think we're going to see it back in the future, which would be great because there's plenty more to discuss.
I agree. That one definitely could have benefited from more time, or like you said, two panels entirely differently. And I would love to see in the future kind of I guess, an acknowledgement or like a blend of this panel is going to need more time. And this other panel is for fun. And maybe it could go shorter. Like, I think that there were some panel, maybe I would lump cozy fantasy into this. Maybe the romance or ruin, which was kind of just, it was like fun. It was like a little bit late
Yeah,
night.
yeah, yeah.
And it was just like, those panels maybe don't need the hour and a half, which would then allow me to go to more panels. If they're not all an hour and a half, then I can go to more panels, which is what I want. But then we had Science in the Cosmere, friend of the pod, Bookborn was on that one, along with some other great people. I love when individuals get nerdy about the elements of the Cosmere facts.
I think this is another one that's like maybe too broad. Like science in the Cosmere, that's a lot of stuff. And maybe like we need to break it up to physics in the Cosmere, chemistry in the Cosmere, biology in the Cosmere.
Yeah, that is one thing I would love if there was more specificity. Because, like, for example, I know Bookborn's background is in engineering. And
Yeah.
I know there are other people who are great Cosmere nerds who have an engineering background. And so it would be very interesting just to have like an engineering or really like hard material, but then
Right.
physics or like theoretical physics to even like push it further. That's speculative. And that's like
Yeah.
talking about like wormholes or what is a
'Cause I
perpendicularity. And it's
think,
like all craziness.
yeah, like one of the hard things about a science of the Cosmere panel is that there is a lot of science in the Cosmere, but ultimately only Brandon really knows the answers to stuff. And so I think one problem is that the audience like wants answers to questions that panelists literally cannot have.
Hmm.
And then two, there were, like you said, you know, experts on certain things on this panel. Bookborn's an engineer. There was another panelist, I think, who's specifically a biologist,
Right.
etc. But like, there's not a chemist, you
Hmm.
know? And so then you would had people asking chemistry questions, and everyone on the panel was like, well, none of us is a like, we don't actually, we can't answer that question. So it might have been helpful to be able to be specific to the expertises of the panelists.
And then our three panels, Stormlight Archive, 2 theorizing in the future, villains and dragons in the Cosmere, all of those were recorded. And we took questions and recorded those questions after from some of the audience that wasn't able to ask during the panel. And so we are going to release the recording of the total panel and follow up with the questions that were asked, giving some of the answers after we confer with our fellow panelists. Those are probably going to be released in January. We do have an embargo right now. But so I think that if you are interested in hearing more of the panels that we were on, we will have those. I can't speak for other panels that we just went over, but you know, in my opinion, yes, the panels are the greatest thing after the Worldhopper Ball. And so yes, all the panels should be released. If there was a film, they should be released on YouTube. If they were audio, they should be released as podcasts. I love the panels. And thank you so much to all of the panelists who prepared and did work and like you created new music and new art and like gave deep thought. It is clearly what we love to do, but it's cool to experience that when other people are giving us new information as well.
But panels are not the only thing at the convention. There are other things. Like we mentioned, there is the exhibitor hall, there is the game room. Did you go to the game room at all? Is there
I
anything
definitely
you
was
wanna...
in the game room. Yeah, I mean, the game room is just a awesome space where people are playing games, but there are hundreds of available board games,
Mm.
and then tables where people can choose to play multiple different Cosmere RPGs were going on. There was an epic RPG. This is just another fun fact. It went from like 7
Oh,
o'clock to
yeah.
midnight. It was like 5 hours of RPG play. And Brandon canonized the events of the epic RPG.
Oh.
And so that story that they played out and the ending that they got to, which had multiple different options, like other things could have happened. Brandon canonized the ending, so that's part of Rashar lore now
Oh,
at this point.
interesting. Okay.
And
I didn't
then,
hear about that.
yeah, and then there's fun one shots. People like Kyle and Irving from Complicated Opportunities were there, organized by friend CJ Cosmere Quandaries. He was helping out Brotherwise a lot. So really love the vibe in the game room. There were people painting minifigs and just like hanging.
Oh, that's cute.
It was just like a good space, a good vibe. As mentioned, I wish there were more signs and like people knew, but it also created kind of like a somewhat cozy vibe
Yeah.
for the gaming community.
There's also, of course, the convention game.
Oh, yes, of course.
We've talked a lot about convention games in the past. We did not play literally at all this year. I opened the little booklet that we got and like read the first page kind of introduction and was basically immediately confused. So I didn't even try, which was kind of a bummer. I always like kind of casually participating and getting to do little bits here and there. This year, I did not do a single thing for the convention game.
So I think this is interesting. I tried to talk to a bunch of people, like kind of
Mhm.
doing mini interviews when I noticed that they were very into the convention game. And this is basically what I heard. The convention game was cool. It took a long period of time,
Yeah.
which for the people who are really into the convention game, which there are a large number of people,
Oh, yeah.
it was a good time. The end result, the reward at the end, at the end of the rainbow,
Yeah.
wasn't super great. And so I think people were like a little bummed about the amount of time they put in to get something that was like not a huge prize.
Yeah.
And then the overall way that the convention game was organized, it was kind of like you went on different missions around the convention center, but you could be assigned to different mission tracks. And so
Yes.
not everybody was going to the same thing to do the same thing. And then at the end, you had to meet up with people from the other 3 tracks. And so that you were kind of like coming together as a group to learn the full. And I thought that was like a really, 1, good way logistically to spread people out.
Yes.
And then 2, a fun way to bring everybody back together.
Yeah, I think that there were a lot of improvements this year that really did enhance the experience, as you said, both logistically and in terms of community building. I think those aspects are really cool. It was great to see. This also meant that the convention game didn't interfere as much with other aspects of the convention. Like it wasn't disruptive to panels. It wasn't very disruptive in the exhibitor hall, etc. When I did see people doing the game, the lines were still extremely long, but at least they weren't getting in the way of anything else. I do think that that complexity of the game made it more fun for the people who are super into that, but the complexity was definitely a barrier to entry. Like I said, there was basically no way to play in a casual way.
Yeah.
And in the future, I think it would be really nice if there were kind of different tiers of participation.
Mhm.
If there were certain activities or actions that people could do, a little bit more casually to kind of participate, but not be all consumed by it. And that for the people who do want to do the game the entire 3 days, like that's their jam, that then there's a more intense version of the game that they can really dig into. That way, we can all participate.
Yeah, I'm actually curious if there would be a way for the panel nerds like you and I, who laid out 7 or 8 panels, if like we could collect something that other people could use and need. So like
Oh,
they would need to
yeah.
come to the panel nerds and be like, hey, XYZ, but they don't need to go sit on the panels themselves, and maybe that's like actually like not allowed or something like that.
Well, yeah, I think a lot of the kind of goal behind the convention game, which is particularly great if you're new to the con, if it's your first convention ever, if you're alone at the convention, is that it gives you a structure to explore all the different aspects of the convention. So there's, certain rewards for going to a panel, checking out the exhibitor hall, checking out the craft room, going to the game room, right? It kind of gives you a structure to like go all the different places and
Right.
try everything, which I think is part of the goal. So I don't know if
Yeah.
they would actually want to take away that incentive and be like, well, you don't actually have to go to the panel, just find someone else who did.
Maybe, and maybe it's not like a huge aspect. I'm not going to pretend like I'm the game designer here of the convention game, but if it was like you spend 3 days, 5 hours a day inside of Detritus, the game room,
Mhm.
then like you get a special bit of lore that helps other people with
Yeah.
the convention game. And if you're at 10 panels or something like that, you get the special bit of lore. And then it would just like, I don't need to do everything, but someone could come out and be like, Tyler, I know you're a panel nerd. Did you get the special 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? And I would be like, yeah. Here's like the code or whatever it happens to be. And then they could like take that and like go combine. Anyways, I think that
Yeah.
they did do something like that. They like gave the different tracks and then
Yeah.
you had to come back together. So I'm just wondering, if there were like tiers, because basically I feel like this is kind of like Super Smash Bros, which started as a video game that was like more casual than fighting games were in the past.
Mhm.
But then you have the people who become experts at Super Smash Bros.
Yeah.
And they do it like it's their job.
Yeah.
And they are playing Smash Bros in a way that you didn't know Smash Bros. Like I just wanted to be Kirby.
Yeah.
And that's basically what happens with a convention game. You get some people who are experts at the games, and I just want to be like playing as Kirby and just like floating around and like I'll help if you
Yeah.
want me to.
Totally. Yeah. I'm like, can I just like get a couple stamps and like collect a little token or something? Like, I don't need to go full bore, but like a couple little things would be fun.
I would be interested in hearing how people thought about it compared to last year. I know that people were really into the trading card games. One person though, like he said the thing to me that like, yes, I know, but vocalizing it from another person was better. He was like, yeah, it's an addiction. Trading cards are bad for me.
Oh, wow.
And I could not stop playing the game.
Oh,
and
no.
I was just like, yes, that's what trading cards are. Like, that's the whole point
Oh,
of
wow.
trading cards is just like, they are a gambling source. Like you open the pack, you're getting some certain
Yeah.
things, the rarity shoots up and like you start knowing like, I'm going to open another pack and maybe it's going to be
I've never
Herald
thought
number
about
9.
it like that.
I mean, it's all card game. It's just like a source of gambling that's like diffused into, and you're playing Pokemon or whatever. It's just like you open it and you get the Charizard and oh my gosh, it's like a holographic Charizard. Like it's the same thing, just repeated over. But anyways, someone said that and I was like, I'm very glad that they went a different direction because
Yeah.
I don't necessarily want to be encouraging that, but I get why people like it. Like, of course it's fun.
Yeah.
It's just like for some percentage of people, it is fun. They
Yeah.
get joy and dopamine hits from it, but like it's hitting on all the bad aspects of the ways to increase dopamine. And so the convention game this year, I thought did a lot of interesting things to blend, to diversify, and to bring people together. I'm interested in hearing what other people thought as well.
Let's talk about some of the cosplays that we saw, because this is another one of the really fun aspects of the convention. We are lazy cosplayers, but there are so many people who are really excellent cosplayers. There were so many fun, especially crossover
Definitely true.
cosplays this year. There was a Captain America Kaladin, which was very cute. There's quite a few K-pop Demon Hunters / Cosmere crossovers, which were all really fun. Some really good Kaladin roomies. And then the DCC Dungeon Crawler Carl cosplays just made me laugh every time I saw them.
Yeah,
To see
the
a
dungeon
bunch of
crawler
dudes.
Kaladins that I saw were great.
I mean, there were both.
Yeah,
Yeah, there were both. There were some just like straight Carls and then some Caraladins.
Yes. And I loved it. I thought it was really fun. Like I said, bringing in these other authors kind of does make the Nexus vibe make more sense. Like, this is where we can all come together. And I thought the crossovers of the cosplays, there were once again, like, just some great family cosplays.
Oh my gosh, I walked past this family in the exhibitor hall and I like just barely caught the mom's eye as we like walked past, and I, had already gone too far. I couldn't like stop and say anything to her, but their family was so cute. She had a stroller with her little baby dressed as Doomslug. She was in a flight suit as Spin, and then the dad, when I passed them, the dad had a full M-bot like on his back.
Hmm.
And it was just incredible.
I thought that anytime you mix in a baby Doomslug, like, win.
Yeah,
It's
it's
a
true.
clear win of a cosplay.
It's such a hack to a good cosplay.
Definitely. I also saw some like birds as babies
Yes,
and then with
ADR.
a dusk as the
Yes.
mom or dad. And I thought
So
that was a
cute.
great way to incorporate, the very young children into the cosplay. So
Yeah, if you're
love
looking
that.
for a lazy cosplay, Dusk is a great one.
Of course. Yeah. Just cargo pants.
Yeah.
Man after my own heart.
Yeah.
I also want to give a shout out to our friend Emily, Ghost Buddies, who had a Lord Ruler cosplay with spears coming out of her.
It
That
was very cool.
liked that one quite a bit. And just like the Shard of Opportunity, got together and did the cosplay showcase. So there were probably like 6 of us that were all in cosplay as our characters. While we were taking a picture, someone came up, be like, I watched the Shard of Opportunity. I love the loose cannons and the cannon walkers. And that was really cool. And it was the first time either that I've seen those people in person at all, or, seen them in a year. And so it was just like a lot of fun to be with them. There may be some memes coming your direction with us in cosplay. You'll have to keep an eye out for that in the future, though, because I had a lot of fun with the cosplays this year. So not only were the cosplays fun, I had just the best time at Dragonsteel Nexus. Easily the high point of my year. So many friends, so many great conversations, so many moments of like, we walked a little ways away one night just to kind of like get out of the immediate vibe of the convention. We're like, hey, restaurant, do you happen to have any tables? And they're like, we're really busy, but there's something up at the bar. Cool, we'll just go sit at the bar. That's totally fine. We roll up there, and right next to us is a woman sitting by herself. And she says something, and I'm just like, oh yeah, this is our person. This is
She had her badge on.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
So you clock that, and then we're talking about the convention and how like she's here and she really loves it, and just all this stuff, and just like
It was great because I was feeling, it was like a semi-nice restaurant. And I
Right.
was like, oh no, there's like people here for dates, like looking
Yes.
really nice. And we're in like jeans and t-shirts, like coming from this convention.
You were in jeans and t-shirt. I was in cosplay.
Oh, that's right. You were in cosplay.
So I looked ridiculous. And this person is obviously our people, and they
Yeah.
were just immediately, those connections were formed. And that's the underlying factor that I feel so strongly about Dragonsteel Nexus, why I think it's so great, is the capital C connection that we had with these books, that you and I have with each other, is then magnified endlessly by those connections forming with everyone around us. And I love it so much. It's such a great experience.
Yeah, I have been thinking a lot about community, and the author John Green recently put out like a very short essay sort of talking about how something recommended for married couples is to have a third thing that they both love.
Mhm.
That like you can't just love each other, you have to have something else outside of both of you
Right.
to orient your love around. And, he talked a little bit about what that is with his wife, but then also he's a big British football fan.
Soccer for you Americans.
Yes. And he talks a lot about kind of the specialness of orienting love in the same direction with like a whole group of people.
Of course.
And he put out this essay literally right as we got back from the convention, and it just felt so perfect because I think it is so important, the power of orienting love in the same direction with a group of other people is something that feels so fulfilling, so edifying, gratifying, satisfying in a way that's like really fundamental, I think, to us as humans. And so I guess I just want to extend like a big thank you to all of the folks who listen to this podcast, who make up part of our community, all of the people that we met at Nexus that we had the pleasure of either meeting for the first time or strengthening our connections with, just to say thank you for being here. Thank you for helping contribute to this community. Thank you for orienting your love in the same direction as us. And let's just continue making this community stronger and better.
Beautifully said. Love the Nerdfighter community. Love the Cosmere community. Love our little Cosmere Conversations community. And I like all of us orienting in the same direction. And, we lift the bridge together. And at Dragonsteel Nexus, the bridge was awesome. And it was just so great. So thank you all for being a part of it in large ways, in small ways. Thanks to Dragonsteel, Brandon and Emily Sanderson, just, everybody who was involved. It truly was a remarkable experience. And let us know, what your thoughts were. Did you agree? Did you disagree? And just kind of like, let's keep moving one step after the other in that positive direction and kind of orienting our love and our passion and our compassion in the same direction. Because I think the benefits from that are truly endless. Brooke, can you take us away?
Until next time, life before death,
Strength before weakness.
journey before destination.